This film is a tribute to my father-in-law, who, in his own quiet way, taught us the true values of life. Do you know what it feels as a 28-year-old man to have your home in Peshawar snatched away from you? Do you know how it feels as a soldier to fight against the very same battalion you were commissioned from in the Indian Military Academy, who is now your enemy? Do you know what it feels to be fighting on the Peshawar-Srinagar road axis, a road you have traversed annually for your summer holidays since the day you were born? Do you know how it feels that you could be asked to kill your Muslim friend who was as close to you as a brother? Well, this is the story of one such man, Khanna, who commanded 4 Kumaon in 1948 and was awarded the Mahavir Chakra. And after 30 years of partition, his Pakistani coursemate from Lahore called him to ask if his daughter, who was coming to Delhi to a college, could visit him. His daughter stayed with him for 2 years, the entire duration of the study. It is also the story of hundreds of families that went through the same trauma of partition, each with a different story. Some of incredible savagery, and yet some of an unbelievable compassion. This is the story of the first engagement of 4 Kumaon after independence. The photograph shows the GOC of the division, Major General K.S. Timaya, congratulating Juma Muhammad, the recipient of the VRC, and perhaps the only civilian to have received such an award. Juma Muhammad had saved the CO's life when he had been badly wounded in an ambush by informing the battalion headquarters and leading the rescue party. Looking on is the then CO, Colonel M.M. Khanna, MVC, who during operations had got a machine gun burst in his chest and had been severely wounded in battle and evacuated to MH Srinagar. 4 Kumaon did exceptionally well and got the first ever PVC awarded to Major Somnath Sharma in a standalone company action, the fourth MVC which was ever awarded to Colonel M.M. Khanna, and a VRC to Juma Muhammad, the shepherd boy. The story is also about the trauma of partition at the end of the British rule in India, and how that generation, brought up on the values of the British Raj, coped with partition. In all, about 7.5 million Hindus and Sikhs and 6 million Muslims, ranging from kings and rulers of the states to soldiers, businessmen, landlords, farmers and workers from all walks of life, became refugees and crossed the newly created border of India and Pakistan. The film is specially made for the children and grandchildren of General Khanna's family, now grown up, happy and working all over the world, to tell them what it felt like, irrespective of your profession, to have just started your family and to have your home and country snatched away from you in the prime of your life. 15th of August, 1947. In hindsight, the British had certainly done their homework well and dramatically planned the hurried de-induction through the Kashmir imbroglio they created and up to the escalation and involvement of the United Nations. All this because they could not afford the crippling war expenses and the cost of a large standing army. They chose to end the 250-year relationship by running away from their responsibility. Despite having been victorious in World War II, the British knew that they had lost the jewel in the crown. At the beginning of their 250-year rule, they had realized that they could not rule India efficiently unless they had the rulers of the erstwhile states, the bureaucracy and the military on their side. And so, throughout the British rule, After the recognition of the royalty, the best jobs to Indians went to the Indian civil services. After that came the armed forces, and then came the police and the provincial services. In this hurried exit, to guarantee the safe withdrawal of the expats, the British Crown, Parliament, and the Army Council in London decided that the initial C&Cs of both the armies would be Britishers. They were to hold the post for around 18 months through the expected period of tumult, if any. Accordingly, General Frank Musservy was appointed as the first C&C of the Pakistan Army, and General Roy Butcher was made the C&C of the Indian Army. The first ethnic Indian Army C&C was General K.M. Cariappa, who took over as the C&C of the Indian Army in January 1949. The first ethnic Pakistan C&C was General Ayub Khan, who took over on the 17th of January 1951. The initial operations in J&K were therefore planned and conducted by General Musservy and General Butcher alone. It is therefore impossible that the British did not know exactly what was happening on ground on either side. The fact that they chose the partition of India and abdicated responsibility over a smooth transfer of power after 250 years of governments showed the situation was already out of their hands. The twilight of the British rule in India had now arrived. The Independence Day was celebrated with a certain strained fervor. Both governments, despite the preparations, had not imagined the scenes of horror that they would witness. The common man of both countries had not imagined the trauma of partition. Just a few organized trains, piecemeal migration in an assortment of transports, homelessness, crime, an unimaginable loss of life with nothing to look forward to was not a good beginning. However, the trauma of Kashmir was about to begin. A look at the age and fitness of Kumaon. Colonel Khanna had been schooled in Lahore and was commissioned in July 1936. He was married to Surinder Khanna in 1938. In 1947, he had just 11 years service and 5 years combat experience. He had served in Singapore, Ceylon, had passed his staff college from Quetta and done a DQ's assignment in the Middle East when he assumed command of Kumaon in 1947. The troops too were as young and fit as they had a colour service of 8 years in those days and a reserve liability of only 5 years. Opening encounter of Kumaon. After routing the Razakars on 3rd November 1947 at Badgam, 162 Brigade pursued the enemy along the Baramulla-Uri axis and on 13th November recaptured Uri. Uri is located along the Jhelum River and surrounded by dominating ridgelines north and south of the river, with peaks ranging from 5,000 to 10,000 feet. From Uri emanates the famous track which goes on to the Hajipir Pass. Kumaon had been placed under command 161 Brigade with effect from November 22, 1947. Thereafter, due to the snowfall, there was a prolonged lull in the operations. However, the commander 161 Brigade had a task for Kumaon. On 14th January 1948, Kumaon at Uri was tasked to move to Mahura to establish themselves on the north bank of the river Jhelum. This was the first action mentioned in the citation of Lieutenant Colonel M.M. Khanna for the MVC initiated subsequently by the Military Secretary Branch and signed personally by Major General Thakur Nathu Singh, the Military Secretary himself. It was also perhaps one of the most demanding ones of those days, as infantry battalions were neither trained, equipped, nor clothed for sub-zero temperatures. In a blinding snowstorm, they reached Mahura and the battalion crossed the river on a rope bridge, whilst the battalion ammunition and stores were ferried across in a wooden box on a single wire strand. Subsequently, the battalion was maintained across the river in this fashion for a long time. But what did this enemy, who between the 22nd and 26th of November had overrun Dumel, Muzaffarabad, Uri and Baramulla, look like? Basically, they were a ruthless mob assisted by the Pakistani army who had taken Kashmir by storm with their savagery and their disdain for human life. Yet, in their success lay the seeds of their doom. For on the way, they took to looting and raping, and the ultimate goal of the holy war for the Muslims was forgotten, and they were alienated by the local population and exploited their animal instincts. However, till the regular army units had not been identified in the engagements, the strength and support of the local population could not be gauged. The first snowfall heralded the advent of winter, and every soldier knows that there is no contest with nature and respects the laws of nature. One has to hunker down and look for an opportunity. Whatever little build-up or improvement of defenses could be done was carried out until the return of the summer campaigning season. The summer offensive started on the 19th of May 1948, with 4 Kumaon responsible for the operations north of the road and 161 Brigade clearing the road access. 6 Rajrif, a seasoned battalion from World War II, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel S.S. Kalan, MC, was to lead the advance of the brigade. 2 Dogras had been tasked to capture the lightly held Salamabad feature by first light of 19th May as an essential preliminary operation. 2 Dogras, however, was unable to accomplish this task, and therefore 6 Rajrif was quickly diverted to the same task. It jumped into the fray and quickly captured the objective. From Salamabad feature, 6 Rajrif swooped down towards milestone 68 and captured Dard Coat and the Steel Bridge. It also captured Ursa Ridge in an absolutely stunning run. Our army has some great traditional soldiering families, and the Kalans are right on top. Later, in 1965, as GOC 19 Division, General Kalan was once again decorated with the MVC for the conduct of the capture of the Hajipir Pass. Both his sons joined the Armored Corps, and the younger one, Narinder, fought in Chamb in the bloodiest battlefields of both the 1965 and the 1971 war against Pakistan. The general's brother, Captain Inder Singh Kalan, was also awarded a VRC in the 1948 operations. A family of brilliant field commanders, and the army tradition continues with his grandson, who is now a serving officer from 20th Lancers. Thereafter, 7 Sikhs supported by C Squadron of 7th Cavalry captured the territory up to the Navarundan Nala by May 22nd. This was a special day as the first regular Pakistani PW was captured. The PW was from 1/13 Frontier Force Rifles and captured by 7 Sikh. For the summer offensive, 4 Kumaon was under command 77 Brigade, which was responsible for the defense of Uri. Enemy information. Opposite Fort Kumaon, the 4th Azad Kashmir Battalion, supplemented by the Pathan Lashkars, was the enemy holding the road axis. The Fort Kumaon battle group, which had remained on the north bank throughout the winter, was tasked to advance from Mahura on 15th May and capture the 6-kilometer long Chota Kazinag ridge overlooking Uri. This feature dominates the road axis, and the enemy could bring down accurate artillery fire using telescopes like the one being used in this picture by our troops on our own side. The forward-held company localities on the Indian side were point 9062 south of the road, held by the Savai Man Guards, and Goshar, held by 2 Madras. After moving forward on the night of 15th May, Fort Kumaon did not light a single fire for 3 days in order to maintain secrecy, while it carried out an extensive reconnaissance and patrolling as the build-up continued. After securing a firm base on the top of the ridge at Trangan, north of Maidan Pass, the battalion was ready for the attack. On night of 19th May 1948, the advance by the battalion was preceded by a route marking platoon. In a brilliant tactical operation, Fort Kumaon overran the peaks of the Kazinag range by launching successive pre-dawn attacks from unexpected directions. The first major assault started at 0400 hours on the 19th of May. Fighting fiercely over a period of 2 nights, the battalion overcame determined resistance, aided mainly by the surprise factor, and captured Chinaldori and Chota Kazinag features. By May 24th, progressing the attacks along the ridge, the Safeda feature, point 9178, and thereafter, the tactically significant Pandu Massif which dominated the Uri-Domel road, was also captured by continuous assaults. The battalion then exploited and overran the final strongly held feature, point 6873, by the morning of 2nd June. All soldiers must know how difficult it must have been in 1948 with the equipment, communications, the administrative problems in the mountains, with limited AT backup and absolutely no electronic surveillance, air support or LF capability. How difficult this mountainous operation in the J&K were. June onwards, there was a stalemate, but the young commanding officer was not going to be idle. This part of the Fort Kumaon report has never been covered by media and is from a paper written by General Khanna himself, long after he retired. They were discovered in a bundle of papers in 1997 and are perhaps the epitaph of his life as he saw it. The collection contained the following. Firstly, God's Will Be Done, an article and a personal account of his ambush in 1948 at the CO Fort Kumaon, sometime after the fierce battles of the Pandu Ridge. It was perhaps what he saw as the raison d'etre of his life. The World War actions, his victories on Pandu Ridge, and his final individual test in the ambush, something he did not ever want to forget. His encounter with death. His thoughts were possibly collated during his recovery in the MH Dehradun in 1948 after he was seriously wounded, where he sat in solitude and repaired his touche sol, which had 28 holes as it was a folded shawl, and took the impact of the bullets that went through his chest and through his backpack. He describes exactly what he felt when he was shot in the chest, his premonitions, reactions, and how he handled the situation. His fight for life and his thoughts at a stage and his desperate desire to see his just-born daughter. The papers also contained a professional reference diary, a Yudh Pustak, written by him as a battalion commander to get his first command on grid with the 4 Kumaon battle procedures. A 108-page staff officer's notebook written in his own hand with an annotated set of contents and formats. It gave quick access to the principles of war in various operations. Also, the layout of the administrative areas, orders on prisoners of war, ammunition dumps, and various other things. It gave a detailed calculation in the tasking and battle procedures so that he did not go wrong in his decisions. And lastly, a GS publication on the administration of an infantry division. Let's go straight into the ambush. After the summer victories of 1948, the battalion was holding the Chota Kazinag feature. The 2 forward companies were with 2 Dogras and had been placed under his command. They were holding the point 6873 extension dominating the road. All companies were in pickets and were sustained daily by 80 and supplies delivered by pack mules. The CO decided to visit his forward companies of 2 Dogras as he had a present for them, a captured Pak MMG which he wanted to give them. He therefore took a section plus as a protective element and accompanied the porter-mule train carrying the daily rations. The total distance both ways was nearly 20 kilometers and they had to cross the Katur Nala to the company location. When they reached the Katurnar, around midday, the party was tired and asked for a break. The CO had felt uneasy, however, he permitted the break, and the protective elements of the patrol were deployed, and the mule loads were lifted off for a rest. As the party opened their lunch boxes, all hell broke loose, and there was a blaze of machine gun fire and mortars and field artillery. The CO got wounded in the wrist. The radio operator was instantly killed in the second volley, and the radio set smashed. The LMG of the platoon was brought into action, but both the LMG numbers were also killed almost instantaneously. For around 30 minutes, there was an exchange of fire, and slowly the patrol was whittled down to just 2 men. The Pakistani ambush party made the mistake of not bayoneting this patrol, perhaps also because of their own casualties they had taken. Meanwhile, the adjutant for Kumaon heard the firing and started bringing down harassing fire on the nearby routes and activated a reaction patrol. The rest is in the first person from his article. I saw a Gujar hut and made for it and took refuge in it. After a while, the door opened and the local shepherd boy came in. Those were trying times. I was a Hindu and he a Muslim, and was wondering if he would betray me. By then, I was losing consciousness and weak, and kept thinking, I have lived through 5 years of the World War in Singapore and the Middle East, and I was now going to die in a deserted mountainside in my home of Kashmir. I scribbled my name in my notebook and told Juma Muhammad to take it to my adjutant. Late in the evening, my men found me. They carried me on a khatia, and I took a sip of brandy from a hip flask I always carried in my haversack to kill the pain. Eventually, I was carried down to the road head and evacuated to MH Srinagar. After recovering from his wounds at the military hospital in Dehradun, he went on promotion as a brigadier as GOC Travancore State Forces. But let's see how he started off as a subaltern in the 4/19 Hyderabad Regiment in 1939 when they moved to Singapore. In those days, families in cantonments watched and cheered their soldiers going to war, who marched in column to the railway station before embarkation. Now let's have a look at his firsts. His introduction to the first President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad. His wife's tea with the first Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru. Meeting Tenzing Norgay, the first man to climb Everest, along with Sir Edmund Hillary. His meeting with Marshal Zhukov, the first World War II Marshal of the USSR, and shaken hands with the NATO general at the States of the Bosphorus during the Imperial Defence College. He then progressed along the military chain of command and reached the highest echelons after commanding 4 brigades, 3 divisions, graduating from the Imperial Defence College in London, and thereafter getting command of the prestigious 4 Corps in the East. But with his retirement, as he put it, came his payback time. He did not look for extensions and re-employment, but opened a small security service only for his ex-servicemen, where he and his old retainers like his JCO ADC, Sardar Fateh Singh, his batman Ram Singh, Devi Singh, and many others who served with him were rehabilitated. In his own words, he said, "I started as a company commander and I want to finish as a company commander." What a wonderful human being. For the things that I have done and the places I have been, saw humanity in its nakedness, saw so many die in vain. And the red line that divides us, blur all wrong, blur all that is right. But I took the path I had chosen and came out of every fight.